How to build Tic-Tac-Toe in React. First of all, I've got my demo here showing what we're going to build. We have a tic-tac-toe grid. We've got something that says it's X's turn. We've got a reset button, and we can make some moves. And as soon as someone wins the game, we show a green highlight on the boxes that won, and we have a message that says that X won, and we can't make other moves, and we can reset the board. And part of this is figuring out how to detect lines in different directions. So let's just go ahead and make sure that we can detect things in different areas. Let's make sure that we can detect... It's hard to get O to win. There we go. So this is working with O. And another nice thing to do is make sure that we can detect a cats game. So here, if the entire board is full, we say cats, and can't make any more moves, so we have to reset. All right. The first thing that we're going to need to do to create this with React is use a tool called Create React App. If you don't have this tool, you can type something like npm install-g create react app. Now, I already have this installed, so I can go ahead and use it. I'm going to say create react app, and I'm going to give it a name of Tic-Tac-Toe React. This sets up the basic structure of our React app project, and it includes a nice way to start our server. We can run a command called npm start, and it's really going to take care of everything for us. So I consider this Create React App tool an absolutely essential tool. Once we create this, we're going to start the server and kind of gut some of the initial React things that exist in there. So it's all set up. It's telling us these commands. npm start is what we're going to use, and we need to change into this directory. So let's move into Tic-Tac-Toe React. Now we can run npm start, and this is going to automatically... Okay, it's asking me if I want to use another port. It's because I have another server set up over here. I guess I'll close this one. Let's see. So it looks like this is running it on port 3001. That's fine. I don't really care what port it runs on. So this is a basic React app. It's just showing that it's all set up. We've got this fancy logo. And I'm going to open this directory in Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to start editing this. So the very first thing that I want to do is go to this app file. This app file is basically what this page is showing. So we've got things here like the logo. This says edit this app.js file and save it to reload. I'm going to go ahead and edit that and just say hello. And as soon as I save it, this Create React App is set up that it detects the save and it reloads the page. So this is a really nice thing to work in. Okay. The first thing that I like to do is I like to just gut this stuff. So let's put hello in here again. We lost some of the background effects there, but this should still be good. I want to create the basic structure of a tic-tac-toe board. In order to do that, I'm going to immediately make a new file and call it tic-tac-toe.js. And in here, I'm going to have a variable. I'm going to say export const tic-tac-toe and make that equal to a function. And this function is going to return a div. And the div is going to have some rows. So I want to say div class name equals cell, and I'm going to have an underscore in here. So I'm making a 3x3 grid here that we're going to be able to put X's and O's in. I've got a class name of cell. When you're writing React, you don't write the word class. In fact, let me intentionally make a mistake to show you what I'm talking about. So we've created a component here, and we want to import this in our generic app, and it's going to render this. So here we can start writing tic-tac-toe. And this is automatically filled in an import. And I'm going to delete this logo that we're not using. And as soon as I save this, we see these 9 underscores appear. Well, those underscores are all the divs that we've created, and we need to change our CSS to make it display more like a 3x3 grid. So I'm going to make a new file. Let's see. I'm going to make a CSS file, and I want it to be called tic-tac-toe.css. And I'm going to make a rule for these cells. I want them to have a width of 200 pixels and a height of 200 pixels and a solid 1 pixel black border. I know that I also want a little bit of space between these things. And let's import this CSS file in here. Let's see. Import tic-tac-toe.css. There we go. Now that it's imported, we can see these things apply. So we've got these boxes, but since they're all divs, they're just stacking on top of each other. So we needed to change the way that they display, and we can say something like inline flex to make them appear side by side. So now we've got a div with 3 divs in it, and that's how we get this row effect. So this div has 3 boxes, 3 cells that appear side by side, and then we make a new div, a new line, and we've got 3 boxes there and 3 boxes there. The next thing that I want to do is I want to make this underscore appear more in the center of the grid. In order to do that, I can say I want to align these items in the center. That gets it vertically, and I want to justify the content in the center. So now these squares are totally lined up. Another nice thing that I like to do is I like to change the cursor to be a pointer, so it turns into this finger and kind of indicates that we can click on it. So this is the general structure of the board. Let's use some React to be able to click on these. Let's see. First, we need to create an array that represents the state of the game. I'm going to make an array by saying const board setBoard equals useState. Let's get an array of 9 things and fill it with a bunch of null values. This is saying useState is not defined. We need to import useState from React. So useState is a function that comes from the React library, and what we do is we give it an initial value. In this case, we have an array with 9 null things in it, and this function is going to give us 2 things back. It's going to give us the array that we fed it there, and it gives us a function where we can update the array. So we're going to keep the array in something called board. And when we manipulate that, we're going to call this function setBoard, which allows us to give React a new version of this data, and it's going to trigger a re-render of the application. So here in the board, I want to render what is in the board in these cells. So eventually, this board is going to have things like, let's say the board here is an X and this thing is an O. Well, we want to render that in here. I said I was going to show you this error. If you ever write class on a div and you open up the JavaScript console, it's going to say that we have an invalid DOM property class. We need to change that to say class name. It's just something that happens in React. So as soon as I change that to class name and save this and refresh, that error goes away. So in order to render things in React, we can use curly braces which say inside this HTML, I want to render some sort of JavaScript. In this case, we want to say, I want to render something from the board. I actually want to render here these different indexes of the board. So here we've got, the first three spots on the board. I'm going to copy this, paste it down here again. And we're just going to hard code all of these different indexes of the board. So you can see that we manually set an X at the first element of the board, and this cell is rendering that, so we see an X here. We set the index 1, the second element in the array, to be a 0, and we're rendering that here, so we can see a 0 here. This thing is a bit out of line. I think it does that when it has to do with the fact that there's like not text in there. It's a little annoying. But I'm going to update all of these to say render what is in the array, or if there's nothing there, render an underscore. And that makes this grid be a little bit more under control. So this has the ability to render what the board looks like. Now we need to set up something to be able to click on things and make moves. So I'm going to make a function, and I'm going to call it handleClick. And this function is going to accept a parameter of an index of where we're clicking. And really what should happen is we take the index and we want to set the board to be either an X or an O. So one thing in React is instead of manipulating the original array like we did here, it's good practice to make a copy of the array and then manipulate that array and then use this setBoard function to update the array. So I'm going to make a copy of the array here, and here we say new board at the index is equal to like X. We'll update that soon. So we make a copy of the array, we manipulate the array, and now we overwrite the array. So on these cells, we can use something that says when someone clicks on this, I want you to execute this function called handleClick, and we're going to pass in the index that we're clicking on. Let me do that again for these. So when someone clicks on this, we want to run this function that we've called handleClick, and we're going to pass in these indexes for this cell. And one more time over here, when someone clicks on this, we're going to call this function called handleClick and pass in the index that they're clicking on. So if we refresh this now, let's see if this works. Great. Now I'm clicking, and we are totally running this. This is good. Right now everything is all X's. So the next thing that we need to do is when someone clicks on something, well, we should update it to be an O for the next click. In order to do that, let's add another piece of state. Let's make a piece of state called turn and set turn. And we're going to use the useState function. And we're going to say turn starts out as X. And we're going to be able to call set turn to change it to something else. So inside our handleClick function, we can say if turn was equal to X, we can use the setTurn function to make it be O. And if the turn was not X, we can set it to become X. And instead of always setting the board to be the hard string X here, we can say we want it to be equal to whatever turn is right now. So now, if I save this and refresh, we should alternate. The first one is going to be X, So we've updated the board with turn, which starts out as X. We look at turn, we say if turn is X, we set it to O. So now the next time that we click on something, we have an O. And it's a nice thing down here. I like to put a little message that says, here, let's render the turn. We'll say it's right now. So here we've got a little bit of text, and we can use those curly braces to render the value of turn. And now we can see this change between X and O. That's nice. We have one thing that can gum up this game if you're playing super competitively, which is even though it's X's turn, there's nothing to prevent X from clicking on a space where an O already exists. So there is an X overriding an O. Here's an O overriding an X. So we need something to prevent people being able to play somewhere where there's already something being made. That ends up being pretty easy to do. We can have an if statement here, and we can say if the board already has something on this index, we simply return out of this function. So we just exit. So we know the board starts as null. So if anyone is ever trying to play on an index in the board where it's not null, that means that someone else must have already made a move there. So we won't allow them to manipulate the board at all. So now it's X's turn, it's O's turn, it's X's turn, and now if I click here, nothing happens until you click on a spot where someone hasn't actually gone. All right. Probably the next thing that we want to do is figure out how to detect a win line. We can do this by writing a function that is going to look at 3 in a row, 3 in a row, 3 in a row, 3 vertically, 3 vertically, 3 vertically, checks for a diagonal this direction, checks for a diagonal this direction, and it'll look to see if there's all X's there or all O's there and make sure that there's not like any sort of empty spot. I like to do this in a new file, and I like to call the file util. Yeah, maybe that's not the best name, but here we go. Here's what the board looks like. Indexes on the board. So the indexes of the board look like this: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And let's have a function that says get win line that will take a board Okay, so we have a variable called getWinLine. It's going to take a board in. And I want to have a constant here called winLines. Let's just write down every combo of wins that can happen. So someone can win by getting 0, 1, 2. Someone could win by getting 3, 4, 5. Someone could win by getting 6, 7, 8. And we have vertical lines as well. So someone could win by getting 0, 3, 6. Someone could win by getting 1, 4, 7. Someone could win by getting 2, 5, 8. And now we have a diagonal line. So from the top left to bottom right, that is represented by the indexes 0, 4, 8. And now we have another diagonal. So diagonally bottom left to top right. And that is comprised of the indexes 6, 4, 2. I need to make sure I get a comma here. So now this getWinLine function, we can use a for loop that iterates over this array of all the different win lines. So I'm going to say for the line of each thing in the win lines array. And I like to write something here like, let's get the first mark, which is going to be the board at the first index of this line. and we'll get a second mark and a third mark. And now we can say if mark1 does not equal null, and mark1 is the same thing as mark2, and mark2 is the same thing as mark3, this is making sure that the thing in the very first spot is not null, and it's making sure that the first mark is equal to the second mark, and the second mark is equal to the third mark. So if mark 1, mark 2, and mark 3 are all x's, this will all be true. If it's a XOX, this will not be true, because x would not be equal to O, and O would not be equal to x. And if you had something like, in the beginning of the game, a null and a null and a null, well, if the first one's null, that's just never going to be true. Or if you have something like someone plays an X and a null, well, maybe the first mark is not going to be null, but then mark 1 and mark 2 are both X's, but if you have like an X, and a null, mark 2 and mark 3 won't be equal to each other, so this would never be true. So this is a nice little utility function where we give it the board and we get a winning line back. And we can go back in here and use this. So I'm going to say import get win line from the utility file. And after someone makes their turn on the board, we can say line equals get win line. We pass the board in. And if there is a line, let's go ahead and create a new piece of state that says win line and set win line, which will be null to begin with. If we get a line back from this, we can say set win line is equal to this line. And we can return here, because I don't want to update the turn. And we can make a message over here that says something like turn 1. And we can make this conditional on if the win line is actually here. So here's what we can do. We can say win line does not equal null and something like this. So here we have this little conditional here. We're saying if win line is null, we say it's someone's turn. If win line is not null, well, that means that someone actually won. Let's see if this works. Not quite. Looks like we had a little off by 1 error there. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I think the problem here is that we're setting the win line, but it's going to render too quick. So we got to figure something out about that. Let's see. Let's look at this with a console log. Okay, let's see what's going on. XO, XO, X, O. Okay, so that says O1. Man, maybe it's possible that we're not detecting this. Let's see if, let's double check the vertical column here. So 0, 3, 6. Yeah, we have that right over here. Well, we can use the debugger. I'm going to pause the debugger for now. Now we can unpause it, and let's see what's going on. We're checking 0, 1, 2, so that's the top horizontal line. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now 0, 3, 6. This is 0, 3, 6. This should be these 3 X's here. I think I see what's going on. I'm noticing that we have an X and an X, and it looks like there's not even an X right here yet. I think the problem is that we're passing in the board, but we did not pass in the new board. So this is actually a turn behind right here. So when we check the win line, we actually want to make sure we're passing in the new board. There we go. I think this should be better. There we go, X1. There's going to be another bug here where even though someone won, it doesn't prevent anyone from making more moves. So let's add something else to this game that says if there is a win line, simply return. So this basically means if the game is over, we won't let anyone make any more moves. Let's try that again. There we go. No one can make moves. Another nice thing to do is display the, highlight the actual win. So we can go to our CSS here, and let's make something, let's make a class called win, where we set the background color to something pretty, like medium sea green. I know is a very good color. And here on these class names, we want to add the win if this thing is part of the winning line. Here, let's just see what it looks like right now by hard coding it. So we want it to show up as green, but it should only have that if this line is actually part of the winning line. One way to do that is change this class name to a JavaScript expression with the curly braces, and it should always say cell, but we can have a little bit of logic here that says basically if the win line includes this index. So if that's true, we want to have the string win. Let's see what's going on here. We also need to say if the win line exists itself. So let's see. How about maybe we can do a bit better. How about win class? How about let's make a function called win class that takes an index, and we can do a lot of this logic inside this function. So how about if if the win line and the win line includes the index, we can return the word win. Otherwise, we're going to return an empty string. So here we can say win class with this index. Let's see if this works. So we're saying these always have the class name cell, but we can also use this function and accept a parameter like the index, pass it in here, and if the win line has that index, we'll end up appending win over here. Otherwise, we'll append an empty string. We need to do this for every single class name. So here's all these indexes. And it's getting pretty annoying to update all these, so I'll show you how we can turn this into a component next. So we can make a file that represents this cell, and it'll make all this logic look a lot cleaner. 7, 8, 9. Go over here. 7, 8. Oops. 8, 9. Over here. 7, 8, 9. All right. Let's see if this works. Looks like it's not detecting a win right now. Let's make sure I didn't mess up any of these indexes. Let's see what these look like. So we have cell over here. Okay. The on-click still looks okay. Okay, that's very strange. That's certainly not correct. Let's see what's so wrong about that. If win line and win line includes the index of this, so the win line should be an array of one of these things. Let's see if there's ever, let's see, 2, 4, 7. Do we ever make a mistake there? No, so I'm not sure what's going on here. Let's debug this a little bit more. Here we have turn 1. Let's go ahead and print that line out too. So it should have said it 1 right there. Very strange. I don't really know what's going on. Two, 5, 8, 1. 2, 5, 8. Okay. This should be 0, 1, 2. This should be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 6, 7, 8. 6, 7, 8. This is 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5. Okay. That looks a lot better. There we go. So that's a win over there. Refresh. How about a win over there? That's good. That's good. That looks good too. Another thing that we should set here is have a reset button. So if someone wins, we can say that they won, and let's put a little reset button after that. So I want a button here to say reset, and we can say when someone clicks on this button, we will call a function called reset. So here's a function called reset. When we reset the game, what we should reset is basically reset all of this state. So we can say the board should become a fresh array of 9 things filled totally with null values. The turn should go back to X, and the win line should be set back to null. So now if we refresh this, once the game is over, someone should be able to click reset, and now we can play another game. And I think there's one more thing that this game does not totally handle, which is a cats game. So it's possible, oops, that the whole board can be filled and no one wins. So now no one can play, but this game should detect that the game is actually over. We could do something that searches the array and sees if there's any null values or not. One thing that I prefer to do is count how many legitimate turns we've made, and if the number of turns ever gets to 9, then we know that the game is a cat's game, because the 9 squares are full and there's no win yet. So I like to keep track of another variable here, which is the number of turns, and it starts at 0. And every time someone makes a turn, we can say const new turns. This is kind of goofy, but it's new turns is turns plus 1. We can say set turns is the new turns. And this is if there's a line, we'll catch someone winning. But if there's not a line, and if new turns is equal to 9, then what we can do is, well, let's see. We want to have some sort of a message that says, like, if turns is equal to 9 and win line is null, then we can show a div that says cats. Let's see if this works. Okay, so it says cats. That's good, but it still wants us to show another turn. That's because, you know, what do we want? We could say if turns does not equal 9, and this whole win line. There we go. That looks good. I think we could clean this logic up a little bit. But it's not the worst thing. Okay, this is pretty good. Oh, you know what? We definitely still want to show that that reset button here too. So maybe we can do much better. We'll refactor this. Okay, we've got this cats message. And we should also display the reset button. So let's see. Cats and a reset. So that's good. Okay, before we come back and fix up this logic, I do want to fix up this. So we've got a lot of redundant code here for all of this cell stuff. Well, let's make a new file and call it tic-tac-toe cell.js. And inside here, we're going to export a constant called tic-tac-toe cell. And this will be a function which is going to basically be this. So we're going to return something like this div. But we've got a bunch of errors in here because when we've made this a new file, we don't have access to different variables that we referred to. So we don't have access to this win class function here. We don't have access to the board. We don't have access to the handle click. And this thing all says 0 right now, so we need to parameterize that and make it say something like index. So in addition to making this function, we need to pass information into it. We're going to... the way that React does this is with a thing called props. So really what we're going to write here is this is going to look like this now. We have tic-tac-toe cell. And we want to pass the board in. We want to pass the index in. The index here is actually just going to be the value 0. And we need to pass in this function handle click, so it has reference to that. Maybe we could even move this win class function inside of here. And that means that we're going to need access to the win line as well. So we're rewriting these to use this tic-tac-toe cell here. And now the only other thing that we need to pass in is the index once. I think this is a little bit cleaner because we made some mistakes on that index before. And it's nice to not have to update that index in 3 separate places. So let's paste this around here. We still have to update it at least a little bit. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we've got win line in here. We need to update this. So we're passing these, we're passing all this information here via properties on this component. In order to access properties, this thing actually receives a parameter called props, and we can call things like props.board. We can say here props.index. Here we can say props.handleClick, props.index. We would want to say props.index here again, props.index. Here props.winline, and now we need to add a winline parameter up here. I think this is good. Let's see if this works. Great. We can actually do something better than just writing props here. We can actually use object destructuring to pluck all these things off of props. So instead of writing props, we can write a curly braces here, and now name things on that object, and this will create variables plucking it off of the parameter there. So we can write board, index, the win line, and handle click. And all that saves us is we don't have to write props down here so much. And let's see if this works. Looks great. So I think this is pretty good. We've let's see what our application looks like. We could probably clean up this logic here. But we've got a component where the tic-tac-toe cell only accepts the index once, and we pass in things like the board, the win line, the handle click. There's one super cool thing about React is now that we've made this all, the tic-tac-toe game itself is a component. It's really easy to do things like paste it again. And in our web page over here, we totally have several instances of it. So maybe we could write something like here, like first game, second game, third game, and we can have totally independent Games over here. This is just one thing that React makes really easy, is we can totally reuse this. And I just think that's really cool. Okay, let's spend a little bit of time. I'm gonna delete these because I just wanted to show you that. But yeah, just to stress that point a little bit more, React makes it so easy to, once you get these things built up, you can reuse them. That's a lot of the power of React. It's sort of like how we created the Tic-Tac-Toe cell component, and we reuse that. Let's see what we're really doing here. I think we could maybe make this a little bit easier. Let's see. Display prompt. So let's make a function called display prompt here. And how about if turns is less than 9 and win line is null. If this is the case, we're taking care of this case. We can return this div. So basically, if the game is not over, show whose turn it is. And how about else if if the win line is not null, then someone must have won. And how about if the number of turns is 9? This is where we kind of show this cat's message. So now, instead of having all this logic down here, we can call this function display prompt. I think that's a little bit cleaner. I still don't totally like that the win button reset is written there twice. Maybe we can do just a little bit better here. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so either the game is not over or the game is over. And maybe what we can do is we could put some logic in here and use like a ternary. So how about if win line is not equal to null, then we display this, otherwise we display this. Let's see. Yeah, so this is a ternary statement. Oh, I still think it's a little bit ugly. Let's test cats here. Okay, so that works. Looks like cats still shows. Let's see if what's going on. If turns is less than 9 and win line is null. X1, we reset X's turn. That says cats right now. That's not right. You know what? We did not reset turns to 0 over here. So that's good. There's a cats game. We reset. I think this is good now. Great. Yeah, these turn areas I still don't even totally like. So maybe we could have another function in here called const win or cats. And we could say if win line is not null, then we can return this. Otherwise, we can return cats. And now here, we can render win or cats. And you know what? Maybe it even makes more sense to write it like this: win or cats. And I'm changing this to return a string. I think that's nice. So now we've got the structure here with the div, and the reset button is always there. And now we're just trying to say, hey, did someone win or did it end up being a cats game? X1, okay, we need to put a little space right there. Looks better there. And let's try out the cats game. All right, this is pretty good. So there you go. That is how to make some tic-tac-toe in React.